She presided over the case for almost 9 months. It was recently revealed by our attorneys the entire time she owned upwards of $100,000 of Pfizer stock. And when they brought that to her attention, within a couple of days, she did recuse herself. In addition, she said, I don't see how my ruling in the case could affect the stock price. But there's a lot out there about how mandates certainly do dictate what's going to happen with the future demand of a product.
The judge that replaced her was Eduardo Ramos. Documents revealed in court showed that he owned stock in COVID vaccine manufacturers Pfizer and AstraZeneca, as well as Takeda Pharmaceutical, which recently partnered with COVID vaccine manufacturer Moderna. Jeremy Loffredo for Rebel News in New York City, where we're having a giant vaccine problem, but not a vaccine problem in regards to hesitancy or uptake or resistance to the vaccine. New York's Southern District Court is having trouble finding judges to rule on the city's vaccine mandate case, where judge after judge has had to recuse themselves due to conflicts of interest. The city has been taken to court by a group of school teachers who were fired for declining the jab. Leading the charge against the mandate is Michael Kane, an unvaccinated New York City special education teacher. Kane was fired by the city for declining the COVID-19 vaccine based on sincerely held religious beliefs.
I'm a New York City public school teacher. I was a New York City public school teacher for over 14 years, but I was put on leave without pay, and then I was fired because I declined COVID vaccination.
There are thousands of teachers in New York, just like Michael Kane, who aren't in school anymore teaching their students, and this has put a giant strain on the school system and therefore New York's children.
There's over 900 that were fired. There are hundreds more that are still waiting to see what's going to happen. There are thousands that were coerced and that got the shot, presented a card, whatever the case may be, to keep their jobs. These people reach out to us all the time. And there are thousands who moved, who just left, retired, resigned, left early. So the 900 number of teachers that are fired, the city likes to cite that as like, oh, it's such a small number. It really doesn't reflect the real impact that this has had on teachers in New York City. They brought administrators in from Central in New York City into classrooms. Some of those people never taught children or hadn't taught children in 10, 20 years. In my school, pretty sure I haven't been replaced. I'm a special education teacher. They just didn't replace me. So yeah, there's definitely been staffing shortages.
The first judge appointed to the mandate case was Judge Valerie Caproni. Not a stranger to controversy, in 2010, it was revealed in House Judiciary Committee hearings that she played an integral role in providing intelligence agencies legal advice inconsistent with federal law, which allowed them to illegally surveil innocent American citizens. Presiding over the city mandate case until last week, Caproni was forced to recuse herself after it was revealed that she owned $50,000 to $100,000 of Pfizer stock, pharmaceutical behemoth and manufacturer of the product that the city has mandated for employees.
She presided over the case for almost 9 months. It was recently revealed by our attorneys the entire time she owned upwards of $100,000 of Pfizer stock. And when they brought that to her attention, within a couple of days, she did recuse herself. In addition, she said, I don't see how my ruling in the case could affect the stock price. But there's a lot out there about how mandates certainly do dictate what's going to happen with the future demand of a product.
The judge that replaced her was Eduardo Ramos. Documents revealed in court showed that he owned stock in COVID vaccine manufacturers Pfizer and AstraZeneca, as well as Takeda Pharmaceutical, which recently partnered with COVID vaccine manufacturer Moderna.
Judge Eduardo Ramos was placed onto the case, and he not only owned Pfizer, but he owned AstraZeneca, GSK, Sanofi. He owned companies that are in partnership with Moderna. I mean, he basically owned every company and was affiliated with every company making the COVID vaccine. Within hours, he recused himself when we asked him to do so.
Now there's another judge. Her name is Naomi Rice Bushwald.
She owned upwards of $250,000 of Pfizer stock and has refused to recuse herself because she said our motion, our request, was based on outdated information. Now, that's because the disclosures are from 2020. That's all she's required to disclose at this point. But she didn't say she doesn't own the stock. She just said, I'm denying this because this is based on outdated information. So our attorneys have requested for updated information. We've asked for her financials now so she could tell us, well, what is the updated information? Do you still have a conflict or not? Very few people sold Pfizer in 2021. All right, very few people did because it went up some 90% in value. So if she owned almost $250,000 of stock in Pfizer in 2020, our assumption is that she owns close to $500,000 of stock in 2022 now. We don't know, maybe she sold at the height, and maybe she owns nothing at all anymore. So we have to wait to see if that is the case or not. We don't have those facts yet.
This isn't the first time Kane took the city to court. Earlier in the pandemic, he sued the city for the mandatory testing requirement for teachers. He had concerns regarding privacy and possible genetic data mining.
They were forcing testing on us. They said, if you don't submit to the testing in schools, we're going to place you on leave without pay. My union, not the city, not my boss, my union said that. That sent up red flags for us. We sued New York City because they contracted with a company called Fulgent Genetics. Now, Fulgent Genetics did COVID testing, but that was a side project for them. Their main bread and butter is DNA databases. So when we found that out, I asked a simple question. Are the privacy rights of my specimens, when they're submitted, protected? Crickets. We didn't hear anything, not from my union, not from de Blasio, who was the mayor at the time. So we sued, and we ended up winning. We won a court-ordered stipulation that said any COVID specimens taken from us had to be destroyed once they got a positive or negative COVID test. We were pretty happy with that. 1 year later, the sheriff of the Los Angeles Police Department came out and said he was ending the contracts with their COVID testing company, Fulgent Genetics, because he had an emergency briefing from the FBI that said Fulgent Genetics can keep the DNA from COVID samples and has a close connection with the government, who everybody knows is banking data DNA like crazy. This is a big thing that the government is doing. So we were vindicated. Our concerns were 100% vindicated. And so Bill de Blasio, the former mayor of New York City, contracted with a COVID company that could be banking DNA of school children in New York City. I mean, it sounds like something out of like a B-movie plot or something, but this is post-COVID New York City.
I asked New Yorkers if they believed unvaccinated teachers should be given their jobs back. Do you think that they should get their jobs back?
Absolutely.
Why do you think that?
I mean, you know, if they are safe and they're practicing and they're doing safe things and keeping themselves, you know, the way they're supposed to keep themselves, then why take the opportunity away from them for teaching the youth? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's their choice. If they don't want it in their bodies, they don't need it in their bodies. Let them teach. They want to do something better.
They deserve their jobs, yeah, definitely. Give them their jobs back.
Absolutely should get their job back. You got to remember, Kyrie Irving didn't follow the procedures and they gave him his job back. So why's Kyrie Irving white? Because he's a superstar? Because he's rich? So why should he get it? The teachers take care of our kids and they raise our kids, the future leaders. Kyrie Irving is absolutely no better than any teacher.
Why should they get fired? And especially if they've been working, especially if it's like a job that is like, people need jobs, especially now. And people, you know, have to live, you know. And so I think it's really, really bad.
You know, I believe they should get their jobs back. I think that, you know, it should be optional if somebody wants to take the vaccine. And, you know, I believe strongly it's unconstitutional. Give them the jobs back, absolutely, you know, and give them a raise. They deserve it.
I think they should be vaccinated and they should get their jobs back.
So if they're unvaccinated, they should not have their jobs?
I don't think so. I think if they can be replaced by vaccinated teachers, of course.
Go to WEFreports.com if you want to support the only critical and the only subversive reporting coming out of Davos, Switzerland. That's WEFreports.com.